Welcome now to Heart 2 and the power of connection. Connection shows up in our lives in so many ways, and we're going to take a look at that here because we want to be aware of it so that we're making connections that really nourish and lift us up. That, of course, is a happiness skill. People are naturally designed this way. So to be happy, we need a sense of being part of other things, something more and bigger and beyond ourselves. So we create relationships with people. We also create relationships with things and places. We feel connected to these things, and it brings us happiness and a sense of purpose and fulfillment. In terms of relationships, for example, let's take a look at this. If you buy a pot of flowers, you're creating a relationship with those flowers because they brought you in to care for them with their beauty, and you do, in fact, turn around and go home and take care of them by watering them and fertilizing them and putting them in places in the house where they can get sun and they can be nourished and grow. That's a wonderful give and take, a connection where it's a win-win. That's a nourishing way to have a connection with something. Relationships also exist when any two or more people or things are connected with each other in enjoyment, like the pot of flowers. There's a mutual benefit in the interaction between the two things. Certainly, a great example of this is if you have a pet, and the emotional connection begins when you bring that pet home with you. Love and affection grow, and you have fun with that pet. You give them love and care in return, and affection. And again, it's a mutually satisfying exchange. In the movie Eat, Pray, Love, Liz Gilbert says she's having a relationship with her pizza. What does she mean by that? She's connecting to that pizza because she's so excited about the way it stimulates the taste in her mouth, and she's so enjoy with the experience of tasting this pizza. She is appreciating the pizza, and though the pizza is inanimate, it's fulfilling the role it was created for in life. The world is full of possibilities for connection. Take a look at nature, animals and plants, all the living things outside. Nature outside is an amazing place for you to go hang out and notice connection, sitting and breathing the air. If you're sitting on a park bench, you are connecting with the air. It's a living thing along with the sun. You're feeling the sun. In the moon, if it's evening outside, the light of the moon feels soft, maybe nurturing to you. The stars twinkling in the sky also bring joy to you, possibly. It stimulates the idea of this is possible, that is possible. Being outside and connecting, these are all resources that are full of active, creative energy, ever-changing, activating aliveness and so much. Trees and rocks and bugs, large and small, microscopic life, you name it, it's all available for you to have a relationship with, a connection. You've only to open yourself to it. Connection with people can happen in many ways. Consider digital communication. There's FaceTime, Facebook, email, texting, and so many apps available to us now. With our phones and computers and other digital electronic means of connecting, barriers that used to be in place and keep us from each other are no longer there. Connection is so available to us now, and the ability to grow relationships. And so that takes us to the happiness skills list available to us in this section. And the first one is connect, with your focus on making connection with things that you enjoy. Let's begin with a simple awareness exercise. As I invite you into making a list of everything that you can think of that you feel connected to in a positive way. Of course, we do have connections with things that maybe don't feel so positive, maybe things that don't nourish us. But on this list, I want you to put everything you can think of, large and small, common, unique, unusual, whatever. This is your personal list. This is a list of the things that you feel connected to in a good way. People who nourish you, people you enjoy being with, places you enjoy being. Is it nature? Is it trees? Is it your home? Is it activities you feel connected to? Maybe you're a rock climber, or maybe you're a skydiver. What about other things like inanimate objects? Maybe it's your grandma's rocking chair and you love sitting in that. You're so connected to it. How about your wardrobe? Frequently, we have one favorite thing we love to wear. These are things we really feel connected to. Put them all on your list. It's so important to bring our awareness to the things that nourish us. And this is one of those exercises. Take your time. You can hit a pause here. Fill out these lines with the things that you feel connected to in a great way. And then come back. Now that you have the list, and we've brought your attention to the people and the things that bring you smiles and joy and happiness, the things you feel really good with, and you want to communicate and connect with a lot, this is a great place to put your focus. And the practice here now is to choose 1, 2, or 3 things that you want to make sure that you set your intention to connect with every day. Is it getting up and putting on your favorite sweatshirt? There's one right there. Maybe it's you want to make sure you connect with your neighbor. You knew that she was having a hard time and you want to check in with her. Set your intention to focus on those things that feel really good to you each day. Let's look at relationships with people. The practice here is to create and choose and invest time in relationships that are fulfilling and satisfying, the ones that nourish and support you. These relationships are with people who listen with acceptance. These are not people who offer advice you didn't ask for. They're great listeners. They care. You feel a sense and energy of, I am accepted here, and this is a safe place for me to connect and show up and be vulnerable. These are people that you really have a sense of growing with. So you may be in relationship with people that don't fit this description. That would be normal. That happens in most of our lives. And part of the work here will be getting clear on who you share great energy with and who you don't. There's something called limbic resonance, which is limbic being a part of your brain, a place in your brain, and resonance being an energy of connection. There is a part of our brain that feels other people's energy when they walk in the room, when we're sharing space with them. And other people are feeling your energy as well. So there's a wonderful saying that you'll see several times in the book, and the saying is, be responsible for the energy you bring. Be responsible for the energy you bring to the room. And that's what I'm talking about here. So who are the people that bring great energy into the room with you and that you too bring great energy to? The skills around this are, first, relationship boundaries. Boundaries are an important aspect of creating a life that nourishes your happiness. First step, of course, is observing. Always observing in order to be aware of what does and doesn't work in your life. So observing relationships is a thing you do, and you make some notes in your journal. What are you noticing as you observe your relationships? Which ones lift you up? Which ones drag you down? What's the energy these relationships are bringing to you? Because the goal is to move your time spent in relationship with people to the relationships that nourish you and to the ones that you nourish as well, that you bring out the best in each other. So you might say to me, yeah, but my mom is one of the most negative, critical people in my life, but I have to be with her. And I'm going to talk about how you can rewrite dialogue with mom. How do you talk with mom in a different way? How do you invite her into a relationship that feels better to you both? And you might say, yeah, but my mom is sick and she's home alone and, she's just got a really hard time of it. And I'll say, okay, great. So let's talk about what it's really like when you go and you hang out with mom. And mom's maybe complaining and she's dragging you down and it's really hard for you to be there. And what you can do is offer some new dialogue with mom around this topic of happiness. Mom, I'm doing this work on happiness, and I'm learning that when I speak positive words and think positive words, I feel better. How about you and I try that, Mom? How about we do an exercise around that? And she's like, well, what do you mean by that? My life is so hard. I can't possibly be happy. There's nothing here positive to talk about. And you can say to her, Mom, I'm here now. Is that a good thing for you? Does that feel good? Let's explore that. Maybe we play a game instead of sitting here talking, and we change the way we're thinking about things. This is really a big shift for many people to start changing dialogues and relationships that are negative or dissonant, relationships that are dragging their energy down. And this is how you begin making shifts in those. So either people are going to jump on board with you and say yes to trying some changes in the way you dialogue with each other, if they're people that challenge you. And if at time they don't, if you try that several times and they don't, then you look at how you can create some more distance there. So key points are, number one, you continue to come back with a positive counterpoint when you're in these conversations with people. You continue to stay on topic around what it is you're trying to create in your life. Number two, if you try to change dialogue with people who are in a negative dialogue with you 2 or 3 different times, and they're not willing and they want to keep dragging you back to the thing that's wrong or the thing that's bad or the complaint, then you have to say back to them, for example, I understand that this is hard to want to change dialogue with me because we're used to talking in a certain way, and I know I'm trying to do it in a new way. And perhaps you're not ready to do that with me, and I understand that too. But part of the work I'm doing is creating distance when something is negative or hard for me. So when you're trying to make the shifts and the changes in the dialogues with people, if you find that it's just not working, you can acknowledge that with them. You can tell them you understand. You can also tell them that part of what you're learning about being a happier you is removing yourself from situations that the energy isn't too good. It's really dragging you down. There's nothing you can do to shift it, and you're certainly not helping each other by staying in a negative place. And you can tell them goodbye in that moment. Say, I'll be back. We can continue this conversation another time, if this is with your mom, for example. And say, maybe you can take some time to think about how you'd like us to go forward together, and if we could, in fact, move into a more positive conversation with each other as a way of normally sharing time. You don't allow the old negative patterns of the conversations to continue. That's really the key. As you introduce the new idea, it's important you simply stay focused on it and you stay consistent with it. And, I know it's baby steps. Maybe the conversation takes a while to evolve with this person. Maybe they jump on board and maybe they don't. That you can't control. All you can control is you. And so if you want something to be better with someone, it has to begin with and be supported by you. Okay, so let's talk for a minute about how you would use this in a work setting. Maybe it's with your boss. Maybe he's super negative. Every time you get into a meeting, he talks about all things that are wrong, and he's challenging everybody because they have to fix or do something differently. So there are a few skills that you can take into that situation as well. So as you're sitting in this meeting with this boss that's difficult and negative, here's one of the things you can do. As you're listening to him, number one, you want to listen simply for the key points that you need to take away from the meeting that have to do with your job. So if in all the complaining you heard one constructive thing, which was, oh, I'm supposed to do emails in a different way, make note of that. So you are filtering through almost like a bucket of dirt looking for the golden nuggets. What are the golden nuggets that you need to take away from the negativity? So this is learning to take the good and leave the rest out. That's an awesome skill all throughout life with everything. You could practice it when you're sitting in a room at work in a difficult meeting or difficult conversation. The next thing you can do is reframing what you're hearing. So if your boss is sitting there and saying, last quarter sales were so bad, I can't believe the trend that we're on, you might, just for your own personal development, listen to that and think, okay, so if I were in front of the room, how would I say that? So this is important that you have a filter here, that you're keeping your energy close to you, and you're leaving his negative energy out, and you're simply taking the point about last quarter sales are down. How would I say that to a group of people? I might say, there's been a small dip in our sales, or I'm noticing a trend here, and I have some ideas about how we can turn it around. That is you sitting quietly, taking what you hear, and deciding what you're going to do with it, and practicing simply reframing it as an exercise for you and how to turn negative into positive. A third practice can be to limit the time you have to be with your boss or anyone negative in your work setting. Perhaps you can use email communication more than you have been. Perhaps you can shorten up the meetings by making sure you're prepared for them and that you anticipate what might be asked of you in a meeting, so you already have it to deliver, which can shorten up the time you have to share with each other. And remember that when you're done with anything difficult with anybody, and especially at work, and you're walking away, leave it behind you. We have a tendency to carry that energy with us. It's like we have to brush it off. And it's stuck in our minds because we took something personally, which is something we need to work on letting go of as well. It's another happiness skill. In this case, when you're walking away from the room, lift up your eyes and your chin, as we learned in body, smile simply up at the air, and you're going to start to shift yourself and leave that energy behind right away. Choose your happiness skills in all aspects of mind, body, heart, and spirit to support you throughout every day of your life. Now let's take a closer look at love. Of course, when it comes to connection, this is the mother lode. I mean, loving without expectation is what I'm talking about here. It's a form of energy that nurtures, accepts. It supports without condition. This is the highest aspect of bringing love into presence in the relationships in your life. This creates the highest level of trusting connection. And notice I said loving without expectation. When we talk about loving without condition, this is what this is. And yeah, that's a high call. That's something we're not necessarily accustomed to. Perhaps as children, we had more of a sense of, well, if I do this really well, or if I do that, or if I show up this way, or if I perform this way, then I'm loved, then I get acceptance. I'm talking about loving each other, loving people, loving our pets, whatever it is. When the energy of love becomes present in you and with you, it's about sharing that and giving it freely, just because that person is that person, just because that animal is that animal. No matter how they're acting or how they're showing up or behaving, love is the energy of emotion you bring to this relationship. So that's what I mean here. So how do we get there? As I said, that's a pretty high bar. That's the best bar we can reach for. The first skill we want to look at is observing yourself. Again, you can't change anything until you recognize what's there that you'd like to change. So this is going to call on you journaling and checking in with you about, how do I show up as a loving being? When I say I love someone, my child, my parent, my spouse, my friend, my dog, when I say the words I love you, what do I mean? What do I mean by that? Do I mean they just did something that made me feel good, and then I want to say I love you? Did they show up in a certain way and therefore they earned my love? Or do I simply love them, no matter how they're showing up? I want you to simply observe here. This isn't for you to judge yourself. This is for you to notice yourself. And from this point, you can decide what you want to do with what you see there. How is it important for you to show up as a loving being? What feels in alignment with your values? Back from Mind 1. When you did work around values, was there work around loving kindness for you? Did that show up as a value for you? This is a deep conversation to have with yourself. And once you notice what's there, the next question for you to journal about is, how do I want to be? Maybe you take one particular relationship as a test ground for yourself. Maybe it's with a spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend. Do you find that you get in a bad mood and you're not very kind? Is that something you need to talk about with them and say, I'm sorry, I'm not coming from a loving place right now. I need to take a space. Or if they're not showing up in a way that's very kind and loving and open, can you still just be present with love and calm and kindness? Journal what's possible for you on this topic. Go a little bit deeper and decide how you want to live your best self in a way that feels the best to you and elevates your happiness around being a loving being. That's what this part's about. So we've just got a couple of skills here that we want to talk about from this section. And the first one is connect. Do you want to check that box? The next one is relationship boundaries. Do you want to take a look at what feels good to you in relationship and what doesn't? And how to show up in a new way in a relationship that doesn't feel very good, and see if you can shift it. Because the only thing you're going to be able to control in any relationship is how you are. It's not about the other person, it's about you. That's what you can control. And then you can decide whether or not to continue the relationship based on what happens from there. You want to check that box? How about observing yourself? Will you say yes to that? Into journaling what you notice? Some pretty deep work. I invite you to do the part that feels good to you, maybe all of it. Take your time with it. And see if you want to set some reminders or some Post-it notes around anything you learned in this section. And then I'll look forward to seeing you in Heart 3. Thanks. You're doing great.